seeing war firsthand and realizing that war doesn't work.
On the mic with us today is Susannah Rose Stokes, a U.S. Marine turned healer.
And I left training early and I went to war. And it was really this one moment that kind of encapsulates the disillusionment. And I was sitting there in our little metal box in the middle of the desert in Afghanistan where we controlled aircraft. And I was watching the footage from a drone in which we're targeting a man who had just buried an IED, which is an improvised explosive device.
Susannah knows firsthand the darkness of war.
Organization and the programming it takes to encourage someone to kill another person hijacks the system.
She invites us to reflect on our actions and encourages listeners to critically examine whether our choices genuinely align with our values or if they are a result of external conditioning.
And that for me was just this moment of like, how, as a society, allow people to harm each other like this and to cheer over it.
As the co-founder of Metamorphosis Ventures, Susannah leads people through their awakening.
So that we don't have to fight. That's the whole point.
I'm your host, Ina Korobkina, founder of Jewel Branding Studios and creator of the Business in Style fashion course for entrepreneurs. And
I'm Ingrid J. Monday, aka Ms. Monday, a photographer and filmmaker and the author of the book, The Secrets of Becoming a Boss Bitch with a Heart of Gold.
welcome to another episode of the Rise Up and Fix It podcast.
Susannah, you are a remarkable healer, and we're so happy to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here. Your journey began in the military. From what I've learned, you encountered a lot of internal struggles while on that journey, right? And these experiences have inspired you to assist women starting in the military. And today, you're now the founder of Metamorphosis Ventures. While you focused on healing, it now has taken a new form, right? And I believe that our experiences shape our destiny, right? So, there's no such thing as a bad past, at least that's how I feel. So our journey to discovery, right, is through our journey. And to start, Susannah, can you share your beginnings of your story and how has it influenced your identity, who you are today? Like, do you think you would be sitting here if it hadn't happened? Like, please tell us how this all began. I need a breath too.
Yeah, take a breath. Oh man, I do believe deeply that our story is our greatest teacher and was exactly designed to be the thing that helps us step into our dharma. Almost always. I have never seen it not happen that way. It's just a matter of how have you embraced your story to become your power? And I can tell you that even in present moments, it can be difficult to do that, right? In this, when it's happening to you, you're like, why is this happening? But growing up, I grew up kind of starting out almost like a fairy tale. I grew up on a blueberry farm in Georgia, the state, not the country. And was gifted this beautiful connection with nature that really connected me to my version of God at the beginning. And also I was introduced to organized religion because my family, specifically on my father's side, were highly religious, a lot of leaders in organized religion, the Methodist Church. I went to a Baptist church nearby and was pretty inculcated into that. And so I built this, I wouldn't say a need, but I built this connection and this understanding of the world around me through the authoritative systems that were around me. And my father was a Marine. And so he thought, the Marine Corps was one of the greatest gifts that was ever in his life. And so he encouraged all of his children to join the military. All the men in my family had been in the military. And since I was about 4 years old and I watched my older brother graduate from boot camp, I decided that that's what I was going to do. And it led me on this journey of thinking the fairy tale that so many of us have been shown, right? There's different kinds of fairy tales. You've got the like princess who's going to be saved. I had that one too. But then I also had the fairy tale of I'm going to be a warrior. I'm going to go and I'm going to fight for good, you know, and I'm going to be this leader in the world. And what I can tell you was the twists and turns on that hero's journey led me into some very dark places that I was not expecting. And this is also what keeps life vibrant and spicy. But during those processes, it was through that darkness that I came to understand my own definition of spirituality, of religion, and was able to come back to my own version of authority or divine authority, divine will. And I've been doing that for the last, I don't know, 5 to 6, 7 years. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I can only imagine what you were feeling during this dark time of your life. And it's inspiring to see how now you're becoming more connected to life, like through what you do, which is so amazing. And honestly, I'm just so grateful to have you here because I feel like what you know is so empowering. So many of us, and so, I mean, I'm getting teared up, are walking around on earth so disconnected.
You touched upon the idea of a hero's journey. There's a lot of great writers and artists that talk about the hero's journey and use that as an inspiration point for a lot of their art. And part of the hero's journey is the catalyst that sends you on that mission. So I want to go back to the beginning of this story that is your life. You were living on a blueberry farm, had a magical childhood by the sounds of it, and then something spurred you to go on this journey. And you had moments of darkness, and you had to find yourself. And in the end, you found the version of you that is helping heal others. So you had when you were growing up, you were introduced to religion and spirituality. I've come to discover that in order to really tap into that authentic spirituality and really fully encompass it and understand it, you have to hit the lows and trust that something divine, something magical is going to touch your life and transform it. And so what was that moment for you that really made you believe? Because there's growing up and being told, oh, you should believe there's something divine, there's something bigger than us, and then actually experiencing that moment that something has your back. What was that moment for you?
In the hero's journey, they call this the departure. Yeah, this is that moment where you leave the community that you've known and you are then departing into the unknown, and it takes you into what they call the innermost cave, right? And oh man, for me, I would say there was sort of a series of those things that happen. I think a lot of times we expect it to be like a movie, and this is one of the challenges of the hero's journey, not to mention the sort of masculine overlay of Joseph Campbell's work, which I deeply honor. And there's a lot more of the feminine that needs to come into it, I think. And that's what we're doing now, right? With the rise of the divine feminine. We'll talk about that next. But
Yes.
the departure for me was sort of this domino effect, this cascade of disillusionment, this understanding that I did not understand, that I did not actually know. And it was the disintegration of the reality, the coming apart of my reality at the seams, one by one by one. And it started, yes, first of all, I did have a very idyllic, from the outside in, it looked very idyllic in my childhood. But as I did some work in healing, I started to realize that actually I grew up in a highly chaotic childhood environment, and outside was my safe place. The animals were my safe place. The trees, the forests were my safe place, because inside the home, there would often be some chaotic energies that I didn't know what to do with, that are just the natural sort of outcropping of the matrix that we live in right now, right? But then the next thing was when I got to the Naval Academy and then graduated as a Marine Corps officer, I went into training, and I, for the very first time, experienced what I would call discrimination, basically based on the fact that I was a woman. And I had a leader who was probably the only one in the military that I met that was genuinely misogynistic. He truly did not like women, clearly had a mother wound, something. You know, my heart now, I want to go back and like sit down with him and have a conversation. But at the time, I was blindsided by this. I was like, this actually doesn't compute. It does not make any sense to me why you would dislike me and other of my colleagues, my female colleagues, and you would sideline us or push us out or ignore us or do these particular things simply because of the gender that we embody. So in that experience of being discriminated against based on something that I had what I would call no control over, that started to make me think, oh my gosh, what else in this society exists that doesn't resonate with my human knowing, right? That doesn't resonate with what I was taught when I was growing up. And shortly thereafter, I finished training, and I left training early, and I went to war. And it was really this one moment that kind of encapsulates the disillusionment. And I was sitting there in our little metal box in the middle of the desert in Afghanistan where we controlled aircraft. And I was watching the footage from a drone in which we're targeting a man who had just buried an IED, which is an improvised explosive device. And I watched him bury it. And we watched this footage of him, and then he gets on his motorbike and he starts to drive away. Well, we're targeting him with a missile because he's now considered to be the enemy because he's done this to blow up our troops, right? And I started to think to myself as we're following him with our video camera, who is this man? He's someone's brother, maybe someone's father, certainly someone's son. He is probably just a boy, like in his teenage years or early 20s. And the likelihood is he was threatened by one of the radical groups there to do it, or paid enough money to help his family survive for a little while. And then we come in as the good guys, and we drop a missile on him. And interestingly, we watched the missile drop, watched the heat signature of the missile, and I watched him get up and run away, which was wild. He made it. I was like, what? And I thought to myself, everybody around me was cheering when the missile dropped. And I thought, it was like a cognitive dissonance. I was like, I don't want to cheer for this person's death. And then he got away, and something inside of me cheered. I was like, yes, good. You lived. And that for me was just this moment of like, how could we, as a society, allow people to harm each other like this and to cheer over it?
Sorry.
And our boys don't know any different, that's what they're trained to do and what they're programmed to do as well. So that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. After all the experiences of hearing how great the military was and what a great thing it would be to be in it, and then to have this entirely different experience of like, not only am I not wanted here, but also the seeing war firsthand and realizing that war doesn't work. It doesn't work the way that we think. And that was really the beginning of like the real darkness, because then I had to realize that I was there, and I was there for another like 4 years. I had signed a contract and I had to sit in it for 4 years.
You're like, oh, oh man.
Oh man. Yeah.
Wow. How do you do that?
How did you do that?
How?
Like, what were those 4 years like?
Yeah. Well, I didn't make all the friends, that's for sure. I tended to be a little spicy, and also what I learned was find your people, or your people will find you. No matter where you are, you'll find them and they'll find you. And a lot of my people were the upper leaders, the higher level leaders. So we're talking colonels, lieutenant colonels, generals. I could really vibe with the older men, especially the ones who had daughters, because they understood the fire that I had. And I took that rage that I felt of being so out of control, and I became a spokesperson for women's empowerment in different ways. I got really into the Lean In movement with Sheryl Sandberg. I volunteered a lot. I actually taught courses on women and men in the workplace in the Marine Corps.
Nice.
Not everybody loved those. And I was also a victim advocate for survivors of sexual assault. And so I got to train people and talk about sexuality and talk about proper ways of engaging with each other sexually to big audiences. And that for me was very, very, very important, because I mean, I remember giving one training, and one guy who was probably 19 years old, I said, in my presentation, I said, if she's wearing a short skirt, or if she's wearing something that's revealing, that does not mean that she wants to sleep with you. And he raised his hand and said, it doesn't.
Oh.
And it was in that moment that I was like, oh. And he was genuine. He was truly sincere. It was a sincere question, because that's what he had seen in his upbringing and things like that. So it revealed to me the depths of the programming around women as objects, of sexual desire. It revealed to me a lot. So because I could just study people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing what you do to disable that programming, because it's thousands of years in the making, and somebody's got to do it. So you finished the 4 years in the Army, and then how did Metamorphosis Ventures come about, and how did you meet your partner, and how did this all start?
And you're a mother now, right? Like, so much has changed.
Yeah. I was married in the military, in the Marine Corps, to my college sweetheart for a period of time, but also because of the dynamics between the feminine and masculine makes it very difficult for people to stay together. And so you see that the divorce rate there is really high. And I was part of that statistic in that way. But it was through my divorce. It was through the disillusionment of war. It was through the understanding that this organization that was hailed as our saviors, right, as these protectors. And I also want to offer that, yes, the men and women that I met in the military are deeply beautiful, wonderful, service-oriented, altruistic human beings, very much so. But the organization and the programming it takes to encourage someone to kill another person hijacks the system in a really big way and creates unhealthy behaviors, right? And that's what we see a lot of that. So all of that led me to get out of the military. And then I ended up going to San Francisco, where because of my work, my volunteer work with Lean In, I had somehow gotten a phone call with Sheryl Sandberg, who was the COO of Facebook at the time, now Meta. And she was like, don't go get your master's right now. You need some corporate experience. Come to the corporate world. Come work at Facebook. And when like the third most powerful woman in the world tells you to go do something, at least for me, I was like, yes, I will do that. She was the perfect authority figure for me at that time. And so I went to Facebook and I worked on her kind of wider team and got to witness her as Sheryl and a lot of the powerful women. Facebook encouraged a lot of higher level executive women to really rise. And I think that was something that I learned there, and how to be an executive woman. But there was where I started to encounter psychedelics. And it was also around the same time that my sister began to go through a complete breakdown of her happiness, of her life started to implode. And the way that happened, and she's given me permission to share some of her story, was through sexual assault. And I'd had my own experiences with sexual assault. I'd helped many, many others. So it was very close to my heart that she started to be suicidal and to have these multiple suicide attempts and harming herself in these very intense ways, especially related to substances that she had been prescribed. Mm-hmm. So this quite literally broke my heart. I could not have imagined a world without my sister in it. And I began to kind of search for methods that were different from the typical psychologist. Here's some of this antipsychotic, here's some of this antidepressant, and just go sit in the corner, which was really killing her. And she'd been overprescribed a lot of things too, like wildly overprescribed. So she went into a deep, deep, like, cycle of anxiety and depression, was actively suicidal. She'd take a bottle of pills and then call me and say, "What do I do?" And I'd be like, "Oh," so we would just help her through each one. And ultimately I came upon psychedelics for myself. But more in a recreational way. Like, oh, these are exciting. And in San Francisco, they are much more accepted. So it was a normal part of the social culture. And the first time I engaged with LSD, which for all of you out there who have thought about it, but you have a lot of the ideas of what LSD is or does because of a lot of the propaganda that came out in the late 60s, I had all of that programming myself. I thought it was going to bond to my DNA and like completely change me. It was going to make me jump out of windows. There were all these stories I had about what LSD was going to do to me. For the record, I totally consent to having LSD bond to my DNA. 1000%. I think it's great.
Okay.
If that's true.
Okay, so what was that experience like? Like, what happened? Like, what transformed within you after doing that?
Well, we were talking about connection at the beginning here, right? And connection is such a big part of this, because what I felt in Afghanistan was the deepest disconnection I've ever felt. Yeah. It was so isolating. I've never felt so, like, it was like an abyss, living at the bottom of an abyss with no other life, all by myself. It's hell, quite literally. War is hell. And then experiencing LSD, it reminded me, the first time I engaged with it, I was in this beautiful valley in California, and I looked across at the mountain and I watched the trees breathe with me. And I was like, oh, I'm alive, you're alive, we're all alive, and we're all connected. I'm part of you, you're part of me. I mean, it seems so obvious. Duh. Yeah. Yeah. And she was like, nature was like, yes, you know this, you already knew this, you grew up with this. This was your first church. This is your church still, but you forgot. Yeah. And that is what then led me to understand. The medicine told me in that very first journey, it said, recreationally, these are wonderful, and I know you love to play, but there's so much more here, Susannah. And you do work with us with these medicines in this way, and there's actually a method of healing here, and you need to go a little deeper.
So where are you right now? Like, are you taking a lot of psychedelics do you take them, once you start, do you have to take them all the time?
That is such a wonderful question, because so many medications and medicines out there are they cause tachyphylaxis, which is basically where you have to take more over time to get the same result. I would say that psychedelics are the complete opposite of that. At least in my life, my experience is that they are the 180 degrees of that, where I take less, I work with less psychedelics over time, to the point where now I am entirely sober. This is why it hasn't been popular among the pharmaceutical industry up until now, because this is not a moneymaker. It really isn't. It is the kind of thing where people do it once, twice in a macro form, and then they'll go engage a little bit in microdosing, and then they find other techniques and methods, and they build the life they want, and they don't need to escape it. So there's no more need for any substances at all, including alcohol, all sorts of things. So I honor the consideration and the worry around that, and also I'm a walking example of like, I don't need it.
Okay. So you experienced your awakening. Part of that was connecting to your purpose, using your darkness, your anger, your rage to facilitate change in your life and the life of others. Let's talk about the female masculine dynamic. Let's talk about the systems in place. Let's talk about the mother wound, the father wound. I want to know more. I've heard these terms being thrown around, but I'm not exactly sure what they are, and I'm sure our audience are very curious. Can you kind of take us on what you know of these terms to be, and how they play out in our society and how they're affecting our society?
I'll start with that. I believe that right now is a very auspicious time, to use a term that the Chinese love. I lived in China for a little while, and I learned Chinese, and I deeply respect and honor the Eastern way. And in actually Mao Zedong, of all people, popularized a concept that women hold up half the sky, which is from a Chinese chengyu, which is a 4-syllable phrase that references something in history. And there's a whole book called Women Hold Up, or it's called Half the Sky. And it was all about the oppression of women around the world. And I believe that this time that we're living in, this threshold of our Great Awakening, is actually about the rising of the divine feminine, not to overtake or oppress the masculine, but simply to come back into balance. That process of the divine feminine coming into balance triggers a lot of these energies that are rooted in our immature masculine, our uninitiated masculine, right? Which is that masculine that hasn't gone through the hero's journey, hasn't fully completed it. And also the immature feminine that's been kept immature because she has not been allowed to fully step into her role as a mother queen. Or let's say she hasn't allowed herself to do it, mostly because of the good girl dynamics that we've passed down through our generations. So speaking to the wounds that we have that then lead to wounded attachment styles, right, is almost all of us come into this world. I often say, like, as parents, we are here to give our children the exact perfect recipe of love and wounding so that they can go forward and work through their karma and then get into dharma. So I am, just by being my son's mother, I'm here to wound him a little bit. I don't want to wound him, but I will, just by the nature of who I am. And that will give him the resistance that he needs to grow.
So what do you mean by that? Just because I'm sure there's going to be some listeners saying, what?
Dharma, karma, wounding. Yeah, let's dive deeper.
I don't understand this. That kind of thing. Yeah.
What is she talking about over there? Well, yeah, being from the countryside in Georgia, I get some odd stares sometimes, but we can put this into other language too, because I grew up with the concept of sin, an original sin, right? Where you grow up and you were born with sin and you are a quote sinner. I am coming back around to the idea of that. I understand a little more of the depth of what they mean by that. But I would align sin with karma and essentially say, because I believe in the cycle of reincarnation, which means you have had other lifetimes, your energy, your soul is a piece of energy that is neither created nor destroyed, because energy is never created or destroyed. It's just recycled. And so if we recycle into different bodies over time and have different experiences, you build up these sort of debts, right? Think of karma like your bank account. And you sometimes have a debt because you beat up on somebody in a harsh way in another lifetime. And then you come into this lifetime and it's your purpose in some ways to balance that. Everything wants to come back into balance, just like the masculine and feminine, just like our karmic cycle. So when we get through that, when you come into this lifetime, you come in with a certain amount of karmic load of these things that you're working off, right? And then when you get through the base of that, you get to step into dharma, which is your purpose. Basically, you come from the darkness, all this darkness and this resistance and the like birth canal, right? And as you birth canal your way through, on the other side is just life and play and love and abundance. That doesn't mean that you won't have struggle. You'll continue to have some struggle. We're in human bodies, so you naturally will have struggle. But Dharma allows you to step into the full essence of who you are, what we call true abundant essence. Yeah.
Beautifully described.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, to me, it's all about metamorphosis. And I don't mean that as the name of our company. I mean that as a concept. Because we're at this threshold of great awakening, people are naturally going to encounter, these are mastery level lifetimes. All the things that you've been working on for many, 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 many lifetimes. This is like where you really are going to face some of the hardest, most challenging experiences of any lifetime ever, which means you're at the threshold of your own metamorphosis, your own evolution. And what we do is we offer you spaces that combine coaching, ceremony, and community so that you can be held through your entire metamorphosis journey. And that can look like coming to an on-site retreat or an on-site event. We have both retreats that serve macro doses, one-on-one and group retreats, and facilitators that do that. And we have ones that are more playful. We have one in October called MetaFest that is a more of a festival workshop summit experience. And then what I highly recommend for everyone, because you can do this anywhere and you can start it immediately, is to engage with plant medicine and community through microdosing. That to me is one of the finest ways to begin to integrate and take a daily step toward your metamorphosis each moment, just like breathing, right? Every breath we take, we can clear a little bit of anger or a little bit of sadness and then breathe in peace. We can continue that daily, that moment to moment integration. And this is what microdosing does, because there's a lot of places out there that are going to give you the blast off to the moon experience, which is what a lot of people want. They want the peak experience. We offer those. We offer a version of those, but we also at Metamorphosis, truly the metamorphosis is in the integration in your daily life. And you need to be around your family. You need to be interacting with traffic on your way to work. You need to be in these normal, mundane experiences to really start to see how you are changing. And that's one of the major ways. So we have several programs that you can find on our website that will offer that.
So there's probably listeners out there that might be like, I don't know if I want to take anything. I'm like very straight, very not anti med. Like, is there other ways? Like, do you
Yes.
do also coaching without involving the plant medicine as well?
1000%, because all I believe in is a blend of ordinary state of consciousness and altered state of consciousness to facilitate your metamorphosis, right? And the reason why we say altered state of consciousness is because it gets you out of your default mode network of your brain. And so, especially if you're already working with some kind of mood enhancer or neurological changing medication like an SSRI, an antidepressant, and you want to be able to be the fullest version of yourself, we've got to quiet the default mode network of the brain, which is your pattern-based behavior. That's the part of the brain that says, okay, I get in the car, I put my seatbelt on with this hand, I put my hands on the wheel, I put my foot on the gas. My body knows how to do it because it's just a pattern. And I do that over and over and over again. But we got to get outside of that. And then once we get outside of that, we can create those new neurological pathways that develop creativity, and you can start to think basically like a child again. And then you can go back into your ordinary state of consciousness and start to see in what ways have you, what ways have you changed? In what ways haven't you changed? What would you like to change? And you start to see how to actually grow and evolve into the person that you want to be.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
So to sum up what you just said, I understand. If someone's struggling with depression and they're having difficulty figuring out what their purpose is, and they're just in very, very lows, and they've been prescribed medications like your sister was, they can potentially come to you, and you can work with plant medicine to lower their reliance on those other and then I understand.
Yes.
So
I think there are
transition.
Yes. And there are multiple ways to do it. You actually don't have to be engaging with plant medicine. We also have other programs that support you through energy work. And we teach you how to do energy work on yourself so that you can start to recalibrate your energy system. That's a layer that a lot of other wellness organizations don't even acknowledge, right? That there is such a thing as energy, like your astral body. And I'll give my sister as an example. My sister, being prescribed all of these medications, at the place where she was wanting to harm herself and was harming herself and almost stopped her heart and almost died multiple times, we did 2 macro ceremonies with her, and then she started on a regimen of microdosing, and now she has healed the vast majority of her addictive tendencies. She completely stopped trying to take her own life. She is in like the most beautiful relationship I've ever seen her in, and she is quite literally an entirely different person than she was about 2 or 3 years ago. Like
Wow.
180
Incredible.
degrees. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. To the point where I trust her caring for my child.
Wow.
That's like where she's at now.
Wow. Yeah, we had a guest in season 3 who visited us, and she mentioned being on medication, antidepressant medication, and that coming off of it was even worse than the actual depression itself.
Yeah.
Charlotte Livingston, she confided in us. And so that's wonderful that you do that and that's available.
I wonder when you're sitting on the mountain and you're connecting with nature and you're taking your first hit, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You're like, wow. Like,
Whoa.
this is like, so when you came out of that, was that like the beginning of like, oh my God, I need to teach this kind of thing?
Well, it was perhaps 2 years later. By that point, I had developed enough of a relationship with it to start to understand the messages and enough of a relationship with my own intuition to follow guidance from it. And I went up to the top of this sort of small mountain hill in wine country, and I sat down and I was meditating, and it was in that moment that I received a sort of tornado of energy that dissolved my entire body. And I experienced a knowing, what we would call like metacognition, where I received a download that said, this is who you are. These are all the ancestors, and it showed me all the ancestors on both sides of me. These are all the bloodlines that came together to make you exactly the perfect version of yourself to do this healing work at this time. So I got to see the sort of perfection of my DNA in me and how that expressed for the work that I'm here to do. So I would say it was in that moment that I fully received the download of my purpose. And I actually built a whole program called Powerful Purpose based on that experience and based on the journey from that first LSD journey to that one, that works with microdosing and meditation and affirmations and claimings and things like that. But all of that guided me to that moment. And it was in that moment that I finally was like, oh, my entire life needs to change in order for me to really step into serving and becoming the priestess that I know my spirit is. But then I sat there and was like, okay, but how the hell do I do that?
It's interesting.
Yeah. And it unfolded, of course.
Yeah, I remember in the phone call you mentioned that the way of the priestess, you have to go through the warrior route. Can you touch upon that for a second, or go deeper into that saying?
Yeah. This is a working theory that I have. I haven't, and there's some things that feel really locked in, and for this one, I'm still in the spiritual scientist research phase, but I believe that there are certain archetypes that we work our way through, and that there's a natural progression to those archetypes in over the course of many lifetimes, one might say, because I believe in multiple lifetimes. So one of those transitions is warrior to priest or warrior to priestess, because as Mr. Miyagi says in The Karate Kid, which I love, he says, Daniel's son, we learn to fight so that we don't have to fight. That's the whole point. The whole point of learning to fight is to be able to walk into a room and for you and all of those people to know that you can kill them with your pinky if you want to, but you will not. And they will not. And so you are fully safe, protected, aware of everything that you have, all the parts of your body, the discipline it takes to become a warrior, the wisdom it takes, and then you can step into a career, a role, an archetype that is rooted in peace. Because you know war, because you know what war is like. You've been there, you've experienced it, and then you've alchemized the darkness of war to get to the light of peace.
Well, that sums up your journey right there.
Yeah, it does. Wow.
Is that similar to incorporating the dark feminine into our shadow emotions that you mentioned as well in our phone call?
Yeah, I just learned something that I think is really fantastic. Kali, who is a very intense, passionate goddess in Hinduism, and Parvati, who is the goddess of grace and gentility and nurturing, are the same being. They're two sides, of the same being.
Yin yang, feminine, masculine, moon, sun.
They're these two. There's one that's highly aggressive and basically will take your head off with one swipe, and she does so in the name of goodness, right? She is destructive for a reason, and she only uses her destructive power for the purpose of that. But there's a legend, a story that the Kali was being so destructive at one point that Shiva came down and put an infant baby in her path. And she then turned back into Parvati, who is the goddess of that grace and nurturing, because of the power of how precious that child was. And I think that that's what we as women are remembering within ourselves, right? I have the power, the wild woman, primal power to destroy, because I have full creative power, both to take life and also to give. And that's where we've been told that we're life givers. And we've been told that, oh, you must be in service to, being obedient and being nice and kind and sweet and make sure everybody loves you. But we've totally forgotten the Kali side of us, which is where a lot of that sacred rage, builds up in our systems, because we really do want to take some heads off. And I was gifted the chance to express a lot of that rage in the military. And I think that's one of the reasons I went in, was to explore my Kali. And now I get to fully embody the Parvati with my young infant boy, because I have both.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I have so many more questions. We have
I
to have you
know.
back.
We'll do another.
You're so amazing, Susannah.
This was so informative and so
my
inspiring. Thank you.
You're so unique and so needed on this planet right now, and we are so blessed to have you on our show. So thank you so much for being here today. Is there anything, I know we're coming up to that hour, is there anything that you want to maybe tell our listeners, or do you want to leave with a special message, or is there anything that comes to mind before we sign off here?
Yeah. Yes. Every step of the way, it was in my growing trust of myself and my connection, my definition of God, that helped me grow and become more connected. So I offer to all of you, if you are questioning yourself, if you are wondering, am I crazy? Am I delusional? Maybe you've been called that. I've been called that so many times. Trust yourself. Trust your intuition. Trust that little tiny subtle voice that's way back there, and you can kind of hear it and it's right. But there's so much noise out here, right? That makes it hard to hear. So go be with that voice and trust yourself, because you absolutely know what you're doing here, and you know what your purpose is, and you know how to heal yourself and your community. Well, one reflection I want to offer you ladies is the only reason I can offer these insights and this version of my story is because of the space that you priestesses hold.
Thank you.
So I am quite literally a reflection of you. So thank you for opening your voices, for expressing yourselves, for creating this space. It makes me feel like a queen. And so thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that.
So kind.
Thank you.
And I would say, I would love for people to visit our website, metamorphosis.ventures. And you'll find our gatherings on there. We have a lot of virtual gatherings. Some of them are free, and those happen monthly. And then you can check out, we have a course called Mindful Microdosing that we really recommend. And you can also order from our 508c1a, our faith-based organization, which is protected to be able to serve this medicine as sacrament. So you can order sacrament from there, microdosing. And you can follow me personally on Instagram at Susannah Roses, and those will all be in the show notes. But I would love to meet you, to connect with you. DM me. I answer my DMs, and it'd be a pleasure to connect with anyone interested in this kind of work, because we need you. We need your magic.
Mm-hmm. The more of us that step up and claim our power, the more powerful and just transformative we can make this movement. Yeah.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, thank you so much, Susannah. Bye. If you enjoyed our interview today, please share and like it.
And if you have a unique story on how you are creatively engaging with the world, we can help you share it in a multitude of different ways. We are experts in crafting stunning photos, videos, and compelling narratives. Our mission is to make you and your brand stand out.
Please visit our website, www.riseupandfixit.com, to learn more and to connect with us.